For your consideration, in today's exercise, we will be evaluating a prospective technical engineer and the personal story he chooses to tell to the HR representative. There's always the challenge of balancing professionalism, communicating technical expertise, with making a good impression.
Yeah, no, that's totally understandable. And like I'd said, that's just beyond my pay grade. And so a question for engineering. And so, okay, excellent. Another question for you. And sorry we're running a bit late here.
No problem. No
Oops,
problem.
so, and again, considering the technical abilities of those SMEs and that experience you've yet to have in the composite space, do you think you can give an example where you had to, oh, I don't know, collaborate with a teammate or associate despite that large experience gap
Okay.
by chance? Oh, well, great. Okay, could you tell me a bit about that? So I guess, yeah, go ahead whenever you're comfortable and ready.
Well, if you would humor me with listening to a story from my youth when I had gone hunting with my uncle. Now, my uncle was an avid huntsman, uh, big into the outdoors, wildlife. He loved to fish and hunt wild game, and he was an excellent marksman and just sort of a man's man, right? And I had no experience hunting at the time, but I decided to join my uncle on a hunting expedition one morning. So, uh, decided to skip school one day and got up super early before the sun rose and joined my uncle to hunt some deer. So, if you've never been hunting before, the way it works is you basically do exactly that. You get up super early in the morning before the crack of dawn. You put on camouflage uh, to hide yourself from the wildlife and the potential that you don't want to be discovered by the game. And then you put on bright colors such that you don't get shot by another huntsman and get injured by a bullet that was meant for a deer or a raccoon or something like that. So, uh, once you have on the proper attire and you camouflage your scent with something like, uh, you know, deer pee, I think is what we did, just apply it generously to our pants and boots and such. We headed out to the woods to sit and wait for game to potentially shoot. And so that's pretty much what hunting is. And like I'd said, uh, my uncle had been keen to invite me to go hunting with him and experience that together. And my uncle did not have any children, unfortunately, but he did have excuse me, nieces and nephews, and I was one of the eldest nephews, and so he kind of looked to me to see if he could create the same spark that was within him naturally of being excited about hunting, hunting wildlife, hunting game, right? So I figured, why not? I'll give it a whirl. And so him and I ended up sitting out in the woods in the peace and quiet, the morning frost. At the time, it was quite chilly, I recall. And before the daybreak, we sat in silence and solitude, um, close, bundled up together in a tree stand, waiting for any sign of potential life or wild game that we could shoot and claim for ourselves. So while it's a very peaceful, peaceful, quiet setting where you can be introspective and think about life and things, it's also characterized by a bit of tension in the background and in the air because of the nature of what you're doing, where you are in wait for something of life to come such that you could claim it with a weapon. And so my uncle and I, we sat in silence, and I believe just as just before daybreak came. We had heard some noises, some ruffling in the woods, and right before us in the clearing, once you know it, a good-sized doe, female deer, came walking out and into the clearing right before us. And also, fortunately for us, the doe started to bend down into the ground and started to root around or maybe munch on some greenery or something like that. But all that to say, it was right for the taking. And at that point, I was quite nervous. My uncle looked at me, and I looked back at him, and we both had our muzzle loaders laying on our laps, each of us equipped with one muzzle loader, and I looked at him, and I kind of gave him the look and the knowing expression that I don't think I'm quite ready yet. And so my uncle understood. He gave me a confident nod, and he then began to raise the muzzle loader to aim and fire himself. And wouldn't you know it, my uncle, the excellent marksman and huntsman that he was, uh, he perfect shot, the muzzle loader, boom, rang out, uh, birds dispersed into the air, and the the doe was struck in the side of the neck and was mortally injured, and blood began to pour out from its neck onto the frosted ground. And due to temperature the temperature differential, there was a visible steam coming off of the hot blood as it poured down onto the ground, and the deer scattered about for maybe 10-15 yards to try to save itself, but the animal was suffering and it was in pain, and it began to scream out with sort of a throaty, suffering, painful cry out that rang out into the cold, crisp, quiet morning, early morning. And so as the deer was crying out, my uncle and I, we sort of scrambled to our feet and got out of the tree stand. And then we went down to the where the deer was laying and suffering and screaming and such. And having much consternation, the deer was writhing on the ground in pain but couldn't get up. And so then my uncle, he once again looked down to me and he goes, well, Clay, if you would like to, well, if you would like to go ahead and finish the animal off and show it some mercy, I'd be willing to let you do that. And again, I had decided at that point that it just wasn't, maybe hunting just wasn't for me, because as I looked down at the poor animal and the life was escaping it, you could see the dimming of the eyes and the screaming while twirling around in the dirt of the recently harvested beans as it ran out into the clearing. I just decided I don't really have the heart to do that. And so, a bit ashamedly, I might add, I did have a sense of shame as I looked back up at my uncle and I said, I don't think I can do it. I don't want to. You should finish it off and show it some mercy. And I think my uncle may be a bit disappointed, but nonetheless he understood, and he turned to the animal and he showed it misery by ending its life. And from once where there was much anguish and screaming and pain, there was now quiet and peace in the form of a dead animal laying on the ground. And so we now have our deer. And now, I remember vividly my uncle then showed me how to clean the deer. So he fashioned a knife for piercing the deer's skin, then gutting it and taking out the innards, the organs, the intestines, heart, lungs, things like that, so that you could preserve the meat in a good way and then take it for processing. Well, as my uncle was doing this and scraping around in the insides of this animal, it left a profound mark on me as I remember for the next several months, anytime I saw an animal of any kind, whether it be even a squirrel that would be uh, scampering across the road, or people walking their dogs, even looking at other people. I remember envisioning the guts of the inside of this animal. Excuse me, sorry about that. Um, because I just never seen anything like that before. Because at the end of the day, it really is a profound, clear look into what we all are as physiological beings. At the end of the day, we are just biological bags of meat wandering around this planet looking for purpose and looking for what is the meaning of it all. Um, Really kind of a clear a clear insight into what we are physically and how that is markedly different from the spiritual realm. If you would, if I should say so, if I should say so if I should say so myself.
Well, I have a moment. If I could just butt in here, is this a recent story? We are a bit over time, so I would like to
No,
just
this was a good 20 years ago. So,
oh, okay.
if I may
So this is
allow me to finish the story, because
sure.
I understand you wanted to talk about the experience gap, and I'm getting to
Uh,
that. So,
sure. Thank you.
um,
Go ahead.
that said, my uncle, he begins cleaning, like I said, he starts cleaning out the animal, gutting it, and I remember the one pointer that he gave me as he was poking around in there, slashing through tendons and fat and separating skin from membrane and really just extracting all of the things that need to come out of the animal before we loaded it up for processing. I remember him making the comment, the one thing you don't want to do is puncture the stomach. And the reason you don't want to do that is because you don't want to release all those gases in there, and it stinks. And you also run the risk of potentially ruining the meat uh, with if you do something like that. And so, uh, that said, he despite his best efforts, he actually did puncture the gut with his knife. And as soon as he did it, he says, "Oh, oh boy," he's like, "Oh, that stinks," And he's cussing and everything, and he's down in the dirt, puts a bloody handkerchief to his nose to try to mask the scent. And before I knew it, the mask also washed the scent rather washed over me, and then I could also smell that stink. It's just like the purest gas that you could potentially imagine into the nostrils, and just a stinging stench aroma that was really pungent and really quite awful. Um, and so I walked off and kind of gathered myself and got some fresh air away from the cleaning area. I left my uncle to finish the business, and once he was done and he discarded of all the guts and the innards and everything else, he loaded the rest of the dead deer, onto the four-wheeler on once we came, and he put his hunting tag for the day on the dead deer, and off we went, because at this point it was getting close to breakfast time, and it would be a good chance to take a break and then come back out for potentially myself being able to use my hunting tag. And so, that said, we start heading off, and I'm looking forward to my breakfast. I remember I had picked up one of my favorite sweet cereals at the time, so I was kind of looking forward to that. And transparently, I'd been thinking about the cereal for a while at that point. And wouldn't you know it, as we're passing through, and we have the wooded area to our left, just beyond the railroad tracks, uh, several more large deer come bounding out of the woods in front of us, and we're riding along on the four-wheeler back to uh, where we were staying. And my uncle's driving, and I'm on the back, kind of looking over his shoulder at the deer, and he stops abruptly, and he goes, "Go ahead." He he's encouraging me to get off and take my shots with the muzzle loader. And so, in a hurry, in a panic, I get off the four-wheeler, I scramble to the back, I grab my muzzle loader, I look to turn the safety off. Actually, the safety was already off, so But as I'm standing there, I just say, they're moving too fast. I can't do it. You should go ahead and we'll just go. Well, my uncle, and mind you, he'd already used his hunting tag earlier on the first deer, so he's technically not allowed to shoot at these deer as they're moving across. And a few are some pretty mature-looking bucks that he would love to have. Um, and so, regardless of the tag situation, he grabs my muzzle loader and he takes aim and starts to fire at these deer as they're running across the clearing there. And why don't you know it? He hits one. And it's a clean strike this time. Don't have to deal with the screams and the neck and everything else. It's another doe. And um, but at this case, it's a bit of an issue because he's already used his tag. And technically, by the rule of law, if you really want to get down to the technicalities of it, he wasn't allowed to do that. So that said, though, it was good to take advantage of uh, this deer, take advantage of the opportunity. And so my uncle took the shot, he made the decision, and we came to a mutual understanding in that moment that although by the letter of the law, he wasn't really supposed to do that because there's certain rules and regulations with the game warden and the council and things like that. But we came to a mutual understanding saying, if asked, I'll go ahead and say that I did shoot this deer. And so we had that plan and we set it up that way. And that's that. Well, as the day goes on and becomes closer to where we need to report back to the game warden about the two deer that we have in our tags, it doesn't sit quite right with me. And so what I ended up doing was once we actually came time to report back to the game warden, I came clean and I let him know that my uncle actually broke the rules and he killed an extra deer and I had nothing to do with it because my moral conscience just wouldn't let me lie in that way and be dishonest. And so that said, my uncle, maybe this was his favorite thing to do in life at the time. However, he was then suspended or he was disciplined in some way and it just wasn't a good look for him. And beyond that, for me, it wasn't a very popular move on my part because it could be seen as I was disloyal to my family member. I threw him under the bus or what have you. That said, though, that's just kind of the guy that I am. So if there are moral dilemmas and regardless of experience gap or if it's a situation that I'm not totally comfortable with, my moral clarity will remain strong. And so I have a innate ability to operate above the fray and sort of make clear moral decisions. And I stood tall in that moment, and I'm proud to say that I did report my uncle who took me out hunting, and he did face the penalties and such. And like I'd said, it was a long time ago. I don't remember what it was. Not a popular move at the time, that I can tell you. My mother was very proud of me, so definitely feather in my cap, with my mom. Um, and so, yeah, I think that in a similar situation, if I were lucky enough to get this opportunity, I would do something similar.
Perfect, Dandy. Thank you
Does that
for
answer the question?
definitely. So you may be hearing back from us. I thank you for the time.
How did he do in your opinion? Please leave your evaluation in the comments for review. Thanks.